Look at the map of the world. What separates what we call the West from what we know as the East? Before it became a political or cultural category, the division between East and West was quite literally astronomical. It was how the Romans described the rising and setting of the sun. The word oriens in Latin comes from the verb oriri, which means to rise or emerge. And the word occidens comes from occidere, which means to fall or die. The East is where the day is born. The West is where it dies. For centuries, humanity has been divided under these two great insignias, whose border is invisible, sculpted not by nature but by history, war, and ideas. Follow us in this journey to understand how the first great civilizations began to draw the line that would shape the world as we know it. In the 5th century BC, the Greeks faced something entirely new. The Persian Empire, then the greatest power the Mediterranean world had ever seen, launched two major invasions against Greece in 490 and 480 BC. Greek cities, generally rivals with one another, united to resist the invaders. From this experience, a question was born. Who are we, after all? In other words, what unites us and what differentiates us from other people? As documented by the historian Herodotus, the cultural and military clash between the Greek city-states and the Persian Empire acted as a mirror of alterity. The answer the Greeks constructed was largely one of contrast. They were what the Persians were not. The Greeks began to see themselves as defenders of the polis. With assemblies, debates, and written laws, they lived with political freedom and pursued rationality. This became what is conventionally called the embryo of the West. On the other side of the Aegean Sea, the Persian Empire represented, in the eyes of Greek culture, a land of absolutist monarchies, mysticism, and ancient traditions. The East. Persians lived under the rule of an absolute king who was treated like a god, a gesture the Greeks considered a humiliation unworthy of a free man. While the Persians were many, yet ruled by a single king, the Greeks were diverse, with each city-state functioning as an independent country with its own government, laws, and army. They prized the principle that everyone is equal before the law. The imaginary line was beginning to gain political and philosophical meaning. It was in this context that Aeschylus, the playwright, wrote The Persians in 472 BC. In the play, the Persian defeat is presented as the collapse of an order based on tyranny, facing a people who value freedom. For the first time in literature, the East appeared as the other, exotic and fundamentally different. The philosopher Aristotle would take this reasoning even further, transforming a geographical difference into a difference of essence. In his work Politics, he asserts that the peoples of Asia were naturally inclined to servitude, while the Greeks were inclined to freedom and self-governance. For him, West and East were two opposing ways of viewing the human being and living in society. They were radically distinct civilizations and cultures. While the Greeks created the cultural concept, it was the Romans who transformed it into a concrete territorial reality, because they ruled an empire that literally spanned both sides. According to historian Edward Gibbon, in his famous work The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, the vast size of the Roman territory made it ungovernable under a single command. Within this immense space, there were two very distinct cultures. Therefore, at the end of the 3rd century, Emperor Diocletian divided the Roman administration between two co-emperors, formally creating two administrative halves, the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. The Western half spoke Latin, had cities shaped by traditions inherited from Italy, and was more recently urbanized. The Eastern half spoke Greek, was much older in terms of urban civilization, and included cities like Alexandria, Antioch, and Ephesus, centers of wealth and knowledge unparalleled in the West. This division took a definitive shape when Emperor Constantine moved the capital of the empire to Byzantium, renamed Constantinople. while the western side, fragmented by barbarian invasions, maintained the Latin language and saw the Roman Catholic Church emerge as the great pillar of stability, the eastern side prospered under the Byzantine Empire, preserving the Greek language and the Orthodox Christian tradition. The separation was no longer just a cultural convention. It was a legal, religious, and territorial line splitting the European continent. When the empire collapsed in the west in 476 AD, the east continued to exist for nearly 1,000 years. For many historians, the fall of Rome in the west is the founding moment of the idea of Europe as a collection of peoples who, without the organizing weight of the empire, needed to find another cohesive principle. And that principle would be Christianity. With the conversion of Constantine and the Christianization of the empire, religion became the primary organizer of collective identity in the Mediterranean world. Jerusalem became the center of the world. On medieval maps, it sat in the middle, with the east at the top and the west below and to the left. The east was the place of origin, of sacred history. It was where paradise was located according to the book of Genesis. Yet, while it was sacred, it was also a place of the unknown, of pagans. This reorganization is significant because it shows that the East-West distinction was never merely geographical. It always carried a moral and symbolic weight. What was at stake in every area was a way of answering the question, where is the center of the world? And who are we in relation to it? In the 7th century, however, the border of the known world was drastically redrawn by one of the fastest moving phenomena in human history. As historian Albert Hourani relates in his classic work, A History of the Arab Peoples, the rise and rapid expansion of Islam permanently altered the map of the Mediterranean, consolidating the idea of the West as a religious identity. In 622 AD, an Arab merchant named Muhammad migrated from Mecca to Medina, an event known as the Hijra, and Islam began to expand with astonishing speed. In less than a century, Muslim armies had conquered the Arabian Peninsula, Persia, Egypt, North Africa, and were entering the Iberian Peninsula. In 732 AD, General Charles Martel stopped them in the heart of France, a moment that later European historiography would celebrate as the salvation of the West. But North Africa and the Middle East were unified under the mantle of the Islamic Caliphate. Suddenly, there was a new civilization occupying the space that had once belonged to the Roman and Hellenistic East. Alexandria, Antioch, Carthage, Cordoba, cities that had been pillars of Mediterranean civility became centers of the Islamic world. From that moment on, the East ceased to be just the Asian portion of the Byzantine Empire and consolidated itself in the European imagination as an entirely distinct theological, linguistic, and cultural universe. The impact of this on European identity was profound. Christian Europe began to define itself in opposition to Islam. Just as the ancient Greeks saw themselves as the pole of freedom and reason in contrast to the Persians, who were viewed as authoritarian and fanatical, medieval Europe now saw itself as the center of the true faith in the face of an external threat coming from the East. The Crusades, which began in 1095, would be the most dramatic military expression of this opposition. These events shaped the very life you and I live today. Some know it, but most forget about them or aren't even aware of their importance. That's why we started a very special project focused on this exact problem. We are Big Picture Originals, a brand powered by Brazil Paralelo, driven by a small team that seeks to bring to you high-quality productions that connect audiences with the culture, history, and values that give purpose to life. To achieve our goal, every kind of support means the world. So, if you feel related and you enjoyed this video, drop a heart like. Let us know your opinion in the comments. Subscribe to our channel and share this video with anybody that you feel might appreciate it. And if you want to get early access to our releases, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen right now. See you in our next brief.